Okay, it's 818.
818.
Now, hold on a second. Are we live or are we recorded?
Live.
Oh, man. Okay. 818-506-2500. Hello?
No, I know where you're going with this. I know why you wanted to know if we're live, and I don't know how to mute the show. Okay.
What do you mean?
Well, all right, hold on just one second. I'm going to fix this before we go any further.
Or we can just stay on the phone right now and let's do the interview.
Okay.
Just that the cell phone, you know, I'm on a cell phone now, not on a landline, unfortunately.
Right. So that means the battery could go dead during the show.
No, the battery won't go dead, but I'm worried about reception.
Oh, okay.
Let's get on the air. Let's do this.
All right. Well, you're coming across loud and clear. You
okay,
sound,
good.
You sound great. So let's go with this.
You got it, man. I just want a good quality show with sound. So perfect. Let's do this.
All right. Okay. Now, Georgie, I believe we're here to talk about Eric's newest book, Twilight of the Gods, the Mayan Calendar, and the Return of Extraterrestrials. And I got a copy of this book and read it, and I got to tell you, it was very interesting. And I believe you mentioned this the last time you was on my show, that you and him were doing research up in the Bolivian Andes at this particular site. Would you like to give us a little briefing? I think it was called Puma Punku. And there's been a sterling find there, hasn't there?
Yes, no. Puma Punku is absolutely, personally, my favorite place in the world. And Eric actually is going there this November. He's taken a group of legendary Times readers up to Puma Punku, which is at an altitude of 13,000 feet, right on the border between Peru and Bolivia. It's right next to the highest navigable lake in the world, called Lake Titicaca. And Puma Punku, you know, has a very famous little twin there, and that is Tiwanaku. And everyone, you know, has heard of Tiwanaku, and especially if you are a tourist and you go to Bolivia or if you go to Peru, you know, one of the main sites to go to is Tiwanaku. And it's beautiful, it's nice, it's great, it's magnificent. However, only 150 yards from Tiwanaku, there is another site called Puma Punku. And at Puma Punku, all of a sudden, nothing makes sense anymore, because we've got these massive stone blocks, we've got absolutely crazy carvings, and mind you, all the stone there is granite. It's actually diorite and andesite, and anyone who knows anything about stonework knows that there's only two stones, or two types of stones, that are harder than granite, and that is quartzite and diamond. So the only way that these stones could have been cut was if they had some type of quartzite-tipped or diamond-tipped tools, and, that is quite amazing, especially since in this day and age, I know of one real-life stonecutter. His name is Roger Hopkins. He's from Palm Springs. He himself, when I showed him some of the pictures that I've taken at Puma Punku, I said to him, I said, would you be able to recreate this? And he said, not for any amount of money in the world would I go ahead and consent to trying to recreate this. Now, who am I going to listen to? Roger Hopkins, who does this for a living, who cuts stone every day? Or am I going to listen to a professor who tells me that all of this is achieved with chicken bones and with obsidian?
Yeah, I can understand your point on that one. And, the very fact that they had tools of that kind of nature, I don't even think there was any record of them knowing how to fashion tools out of carbide or diamond back then, was there?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. And so the idea is that, Puma Punku most certainly was built by human beings. However, with the assistance of extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial advanced technology. And, we might even have to say, and, if we want to get into the nitty-gritty of this, that Puma Punku might have been one of the base camps of the ancient aliens that were here, thousands and thousands of years ago, because even the local indigenous population, they still live there today. They're the Aymara Indians who, have built these magnificent reed boats, and you can take rides on Lake Titicaca on those great reed boats. In fact, we just had a film crew down there filming on some of these reed boats, and it was just beautiful footage that they shot. And, when the Aymara Indians, when you ask them, well, who built Puma Punku, or where did this place come from? They will actually look you in the eye and they will say, well, it wasn't really us, because this place has been here since the beginning of time, actually since before the beginning of time. And, the crazy thing is that if they would have built this place, they would have said so, because they're very adamant about their traditions. They're very adamant about their oral histories, this and that. So I really think that something extraordinary happened at Puma Punku, where, that is one of the few places in the world that is completely anonymous, because you have no script there, no carvings of any type of letters or wording or anything like that. All the walls are blank, all the stones are blank, and we've got these grooves with holes in them and things like this. And by the way, if you just take your finger, your thumb, and apply a little bit of pressure while going over some of these grooves, you can actually cut your finger. That's how perfect all of this stuff was cut.
That was sharp.
Oh, very sharp, very sharp. And so, you have all these different things where, this is a completely anonymous site, because Tiwanaku, which is only 150 yards away, you've got Inca glyphs, you have pictures, you have all sorts of different writing styles and carvings of faces and things like that. However, at Puma Punku, there's absolutely nothing there. Everything looks very technical. Everything looks as if it was some type of a launching pad.
Now, also, when I read the book, I saw pictures in there that Eric had taken that had actually shown how these were cut into these stones, where they would fit in like jigsaw puzzles, like, perfect precision, in other words. Absolutely. In fact, there are about 12 blocks that have been found that are called the H blocks, because they kind of look like the letter H. Now, obviously, whoever built this didn't know about the letter H, and so it has nothing to do, with it just looks like the letter H. And so in the mid-90s, actually late 90s, we were at Puma Punku, and Eric von Daniken and our team, we were able to take measurements of all those 12 blocks that were found. And oddly enough, all 12 blocks were identical in size, not with the smallest of deviations. So the precision that was used there was unbelievable, as if those blocks were sort of like prefabricated blocks. Almost like they were poured into the same mold and released in the same mold reused.
Exactly, because the one thing that I have not mentioned yet is that when you touch the surface of any of the stones at Puma Punku, the surface is as smooth as a piece of glass or some type of a mirror. Now, the only way that you can achieve that state with stone, or especially with granite, is if you conceivably, you have to undergo the process of vitrification. And vitrification means that the stone itself is heated up to such a state where it becomes magma, it becomes a liquefied state, and then you can pour it, like you mentioned. You can pour it in some type of molds, and after the stone has hardened again, well, if you do 10, 20, 30 molds like that per day, they will all have the same size. And so what happened is that we were able to feed all these measurements into a computer, and the computer came up with a wonderful animatic that shows that these H blocks were actually used as some type of an impenetrable wall. And anyone who has seen season 1 of Ancient Aliens, the first episode, The Evidence, knows exactly what that looks like, because they made a great animation in that first of the 5 episodes, and it looks magnificent. And you know, I mean, it's really amazing. You know, Puma Punku, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I don't care. Puma Punku to me is the most inexplicable place in the entire world.
And it really sounds like it is from your description of it and the description of Eric in the book that I read. And one of the things that he did mention is that these people had a calendar that was similar in some ways to the Mayan calendar. And I think it impressed him, well, the idea I got from reading it is being a little bit more complex than the Mayan calendar.
Well, not only that, but the calendar that was found, what you're referring to is the backside of the temple of the one of the gates that's at Tiwanaku, which is only 150 yards away from Puma Punku. And essentially, some researchers determined that that calendar that is carved onto that panel goes back as far as 146,000 years.
Wow.
Now, that is absolutely crazy, because, you know, the one thing we have to remember about the Mayan calendar is that, okay, everyone is freaking out about the 21st of December 2012, but, you know, we might get into this a little bit later, but there's absolutely nothing to fear about 2012, because absolutely nothing will happen. But I will explain to you later why nothing will happen. And so that the question that we should ask, though, about the 2012 thing is, okay, so if the calendar stops on 21st of December 2012, do we actually know when the calendar began? And the answer to that is yes. And that was the 11th of August, 3114 BC. Now, we all would have to agree that in 3114 BC, the Maya did not exist. So what compelled the Maya to build or to have their calendar start ticking on that particular date? And the answer to that is fairly simple and at the same time fairly extraordinary, because according to the Chilam Balam book, which is the book of the Jaguar priests, that says that at that time the road to the stars descended from the sky, and the 9 and the 13 gods descended and taught mankind in all sorts of different scientific disciplines. And that one day they will come back and that they will right whatever was wrong. But so here we have a concise reference of some beings descending from the sky, teaching mankind in various disciplines, referred to as the gods. And by the way, and anyone who has ever listened to me, whenever I talk about the gods, it's always lowercase g. It has absolutely nothing to do with the force of creation, has nothing to do with God. Those extraterrestrials that were here a long time ago became gods because our ancestors misinterpreted them to be divine, which they never were.
Which, actually, a lot of people don't realize this, because I've studied the Bible myself, Even the Bible, when referring to them other gods, puts them in the lowercase g.
Now that is news to me, so you need to email me that because I would love to find out more about that because that is very interesting.
I just happened to notice it while I was reading the Bible because I've done a lot of study in ancient astronauts and ancient, mythology and religions, and because this thing's vast. It covers conspiracies, and some people say it leads into Knights Templars and everything else. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and the thing is that if once you subscribe to the ancient astronaut theory, and I'm sure you would agree with this, no one has to lose their belief in God at all. In fact, it makes your belief in God even more magnificent, even stronger, because it basically means that God's creation is way more magnificent than what we were led to believe so far. Because right now the opinion is sort of that mankind and planet Earth, we're all sort of, especially mankind, that we're like the pinnacle of creation, that we're the crown of creation. There's a lot of navel-gazing going on. There's nothing better and nothing greater than us. I mean, that's all nonsense because, to me, if that really were the case, well, that's sort of an insult in the face of God's creation because it basically means that she couldn't do any better.
Also means that he's wasteful. He's laying out a whole universe full of planets for nothing.
Right. What a waste of space, huh?
But, yeah, and one of the things I got from reading that book from Eric is he seems to be of the impression, if I understood him correctly, that when the gods come back or when E.T. comes back, they're going to land at this here particular location that Punku, I think it is. I don't know why, but I have trouble with that name because it's still kind of new to me.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, look, the whole book, Twilight of the Gods, even in the title, it asks the question, the return of the extraterrestrials, and then, possibly in 2012. And, that was basically just, a liberty that the publisher took here in the United States because the German edition does not say anything that the extraterrestrials will return because of the Mayan calendar. I mean, that is not exactly what Eric is referring to in the book because, look, the Mayans never, not once, said that on the 21st of December, 2012, the world is going to end. They never said that. In fact, what they did say and what they did reference is that a new period of time will begin, a new age. And so it's the same as if, at the end of each year, the 31st of December, your calendar runs out. What do? You run to the store or you get yourself a new calendar. Whoop, no big whoop, there it is, here we are. So, the whole idea that the apocalypse will be here in 2012 and that it's Judgment Day and the end of days and all that stuff, I really would like to reiterate that that is complete nonsense because what if I were to tell you that right now it's not even 2010? What if we're off in our own calendar counting? And if you want, I can give you the 3 arguments that will prove that we are totally off and that actually
at the very least we can't possibly know for sure because there's been too many different calendars.
Exactly. Because have you ever noticed when you were studying the Bible, that how we went from 1 BC to 1 AD? There never was a year 0. So right now, it's either 2009 or 2011. And then the second argument is that we know for a fact, and just because of what you just said, with the many, many calendars that we've been working on, that in the Middle Ages, it was the monks who were in charge of recording our calendars. And we know for a fact, and this is not me talking, this is, calendrical scholars who have determined this, that middle-aged monks or even Dark Age monks, that they made a mistake in recording our calendar by up to 6 to 8 years. So you add 6 plus 1, that's 7. So right now, it's either 2003 or 2017.
Yeah. So we don't have a way to know for sure. And then there's also the fact that you got the lunar calendar versus the solar calendar.
No, and of course, and then the third and last argument is fairly easy, and that is, you know, do we really know 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt that our calendar began on the day when Jesus Christ was born, when we now know as a fact that Jesus was not born on December 25th? So right there, you know, there are all these different things where, you know, we could be as far off as 300 years on our calendar. Because when did our calendar begin? At the birth of Christ, which is disputable, or was it when he died on the cross when he was 32 years old? Or did it begin 100 years after his death, 300 years after his death, when the Romans finally accepted or used Christianity as their official religion? So this whole 2012 discussion right now is such nonsense. It kind of aggravates me because the entire discussion is inherently flawed, and flawed big time.
Yeah, I think about the only way you could really foresee it coming would be to kind of try to learn the Mayan calendar and look at the stars yourself and see how they're lining up to the calendar and try to, you know, recreate it as you went. But that there would probably take more than the time to, you know, remake a whole calendar.
Yeah, no, and I agree. But the thing is, you see that we are calculating the Mayan calendar with our calendar, which I've just proven to be faulty.
Right.
So herein lies the problem. So that, you know, the entire base of all these discussions are based, they're all based in mistakes. And so that's why, you know, it's very difficult to take any of these stories seriously, because, you know, I think it's very, it is completely, how do you call it? It is false research. It is false science if you do not disclose to the audience that right now it's not 2010.
Yeah,
because then that leads me to believe the only reason why all those books are out and all these discussions are, you know, this whole doom and gloom idea and the fear mongering. I mean, it's just basically to make a buck, to sell a book, to do this, to do that, and you know, I mean, really. I mean, have we really come this far? And it is very unsettling, actually. Because, you know, we're supposed to be these advanced thinkers in our field of research here. Yet, you know, everyone or a lot of people are making a buck off of this 2012. And it's absolutely disgusting because the whole discussion is mired in falsehoods. And the good people of the earth, good people of the United States or whatever, they fall for it. They believe it. And everyone is freaking out. And in reality, there is really nothing to be worried about except for a huge hangover on the 22nd of December, 2012.
Well, that in itself is something to worry about if you ever had one. I had a few in my younger years.
Well, you know, I mean, in a nutshell, 2012 is nothing else but Y2K 2.0. That's what 2012 is.
I would tend to agree with you because I've had plenty of people on here. We've discussed 2012, and it's ranged anywhere from the doom and gloom of the end of time to the, no, this is going to be the rays of consciousness into the next dimension. You know, there's all kinds of theories out there about 2012, and I'd say, well, 2012 would tell us what's going to happen when it gets there.
Right, exactly. And I'm watching the freeway right now because I'm at a hotel in Los Angeles, and I'm looking at all these cars driving home in in traffic jam here in rush hour. And truth be told, it will be the exact same scene on the 22nd of December 2012. Nothing will change. I mean, it'll all be the same. It'll go on, and and then of course, guess what? Then the next thing will be, okay, so 2012, nothing happened, but we are sure that in 2027, that is exactly when it happens, and yada, yada. I mean, did you know that since we've been able to write stuff down, since mankind has been able to write stuff down, the world has ended 782 times? And every time it didn't happen? And every time each society said, oh, no, 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 we know that the world will end, the apocalypse is here in this day and age because we're the most advanced, we're the smartest, we're the best. And the only reason why the 782 other times where the Earth was predicted to self-destruct didn't happen is because those people were stupid. But now we are very smart. And here we are doing the exact same stupidity. I mean, it's pitiful.
I would tend to agree with you, especially since I grew up in a Pentecostal household, and I can't tell you how many times my dad and my brothers and sisters thought it was the end of the world, and it wasn't. Especially when Y2K come around.
Yeah, no, and I really feel sort of, yeah, no, it's very unsettling because there are so many people who buy into it, and imagine if you could put your energies and your vibrations towards something other than cowering down and fearing for the end of the world coming in a year and a half.
Yeah. What would happen if you put that energy into creating peace?
Exactly. And this is why I love talking to guys like you, Royce.
Oh, well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you. You're very knowledgeable in this here field, especially after I watched you on the Ancient Aliens series on the History Channel. I really enjoyed that. I will say this, I don't know why it was, but somehow your hair looked different in episodes 2 and 3 than it did in episode 1.
Well, it all depends. It all depends how excited I am. My hair is a living thing, so.
Now,
it grows with excitement.
Oh, really? So, if it stands up, and please don't be offended when I say this, because I don't mean it offensively, but if it looks like it's like a Centauri hair from, like Babylon 5, that's when you're really excited?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Look, I mean, all the mysteries about ancient aliens are actually contained within my hair. So, everything has to be, the hair, depending on how it moves, that is where I get my knowledge from. And please, ladies and gentlemen, that was a joke. And I have to say that was a joke because some people will say, he's actually serious. Yes, he gets his knowledge from his hair. No, I don't. It's a joke.
I would hate to think that, but if anybody would believe 2012 is necessarily the end of the world, they would probably believe the hair part too.
See, there you go. That's why, unfortunately, in this field, you have to make disclaimers after you say something because stuff like that can travel with you for quite a while.
Actually, we were kidding around just a second ago, but in all seriousness, I have actually seen it happen. People make statements and it follow them for years after. So.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why you have to say certain things, just like for example, in the first Ancient Aliens documentary that we did in 2008, which was sort of the first 2-hour pilot that we did before season 1 came out, I made a statement that said that in order to build the pyramids in 22 years, you would have to put a block of stone in place, cut it, dress it, move it, transport it, and put it into place every 9 seconds. Okay? Every 9 seconds. Well, what nobody knows, and so anyway, I got a whole bunch of calls and emails, still to this day, that, I was wrong. It's not 9 seconds. It's actually 90 seconds. And you know what? All those emails are, in fact, correct. However, what nobody thinks about, what nobody knows, is the fact that in the interview, there are multiple takes, and the 9-second one was a blatant mistake by me talking, and unfortunately, the editing bay didn't take the right part to change it from 9 to 90, and so there we are. So, things like that happen, and it's really unfortunate because, but honestly, does it really matter?
That's just it right there, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I really am, but you were sitting there telling me that, and the first thing that popped into my mind, because I have a problem with my own wife and kids doing the same thing to me. You try to share something important, you try to get a big picture across, and they'll zero in every time on one little small unimportant thing, and the whole big picture gets tossed out the window.
Yeah. Can't see can't see the forest for all the trees, because let's be honest. If it's 9 seconds or 90 seconds, both is crazy. It doesn't matter if it's 9 seconds or 90. Both are pretty much inachievable with, chicken bones and with string. Let's be honest. So,
that's the point they miss. You're trying to say that, you couldn't do this in that amount of time and that kind of equipment. You couldn't do it with today's equipment, so you sure couldn't do it back then. But they had to, grab that one thing and use it as a detractor.
Right. And, and to be honest with you, I really don't care because, I know what I said. I know what the camera crew has of me on tape, that I did say 90 seconds, and that's a given figure, that's accepted throughout archaeology. And so the 9-second thing, it was a mistake by the editing company, and that's fine. But the thing is that, stuff like that, it's like, or the one example was where I would say, the lights went out in the Great Pyramid. And so in order to find our way out, I took my lighter and I put it on, and it didn't work because there was not enough oxygen inside the Great Pyramid. Now, I've received hundreds of emails saying or asking me, well, how come you didn't die in there? How were you able to breathe? It is absolutely ludicrous because a flame needs a higher oxygen content than a human being. If you go on top of Mount Everest and try to put on a lighter, it will not work. But didn't Reinhold Messner and his colleague climb Mount Everest in the 1970s without using oxygen? So none of these arguments that come from the debunkers make any sense.
Now, before we get too far along in the chat room, Roya was saying, wanted to know, what about time travel? Now, I know that's probably a little different subject than what we're on here, but, there are some that say that the ancient aliens actually had time travel back then.
Yeah, and that is most certainly a valid point, but in my opinion, I'm going to tell you why I disagree with time travel, because a lot of people are saying, well, is it possible that the ancient aliens were basically just us from the future going back in time and, jump-starting our own civilization? And the first question you have to ask yourself is, well, if that's the case, then how did that ever start? Because if you have such a process, then somewhere it had to begin. But that is not even the most valid argument that I have anyway. The most valid argument that I have is the fact that it doesn't matter what culture, what ancient culture you look at, whether it's in South America, in Africa, in Australia, in Europe, in the Scandinavian countries, in Asia, all over the world. Whenever we human beings asked those gods or those beings, where do you come from? They never said, we come from across the mountain range, or we come from another continent, or we come from the water, or we are you from the future, but they always said we come from out there, and they would point towards the stars. And so, you know, right there, look, if I would find stories, if there are, and ladies and gentlemen, if you find something, if you have a historical text that does say where, you know, one of the gods says, yeah, we are you from the future and we're here to help you, yeah, I'd be very interested in looking at this. But here's what Dr. Michio Kaku, the most eminent astrophysicist, has proposed, and that is, before mankind is able to master time travel, we will have colonized the galaxy 10 times over in manned spaceships. Why? Because a time machine requires infinitely more energy than manned spaceships. And in the end, it's all about energy. And so, you know, we're a long ways off to, energy-wise, to even build a spaceship that goes at a fraction of the speed of light. So, you know, in the end, this is all very, very logical. And so the whole time machine idea, you know, while I am not saying that it's not possible, because I never say anything is impossible, but from a physics standpoint, from a mathematical standpoint, the likelihood of us time traveling before we'll explore deep space with actual manned spacecraft is infinitely small.
Yeah, it sounds like it would be pretty small, and, you know, I wouldn't be too sure that it would be such a good idea if we could travel into the past. We might miss ourselves up worse than what we are already.
I know. Anybody watches the show Fringe, I mean, that should give you pause and hesitation right there.
Yeah. Now, listen, I got an email from a friend of mine that, well, he used to be a pilot himself in the Air Force, and he was hoping to make the show tonight because he just adores you. You know, he really has a lot of respect for your work. I didn't mean that the way the adore might have sounded at first, but you know what I mean. But
that's fine. Okay.
I had a question for you that he was wanting me to ask, so I put it on this here document so I wouldn't forget. And he was saying that on the ancient airplane replicas, he wants to know, did the wings have the following design characteristic? Was the bottom of the wing flat and the top convex or curved shaped?
Yes. The bottom of the wings was always straight or flat. Fuselage. The fuselage itself is sometimes was also shown in a concave fashion, but I think maybe only in order to save, you know, in materials. However, there are gold flyers, these gold planes that are all found in Colombia and South America. There are some that do feature a type of fuselage that you can consider the fuselage, and you know, the wings are not rounded. I mean, they are straight out like a plane. I mean, they're not like, you know, wings of a bird that, you know, curve out at the on the very tip or something like this. Now, the interesting thing about the gold flyers or the ancient aircraft models is the fact that nowhere in nature do we find that arrangement, because anyone that looks at these pictures sees that the wings are all attached at the bottom, like a modern-day Delta flyer at the bottom of the fuselage. Now, it doesn't matter if it's a flying fish or if it's an insect or if it's a bird, and I mentioned those three things because mainstream archaeology says that, you know, these gold artifacts are nothing else but symbolized fish, birds and insects and maybe even stingrays. that wherever we have, or wherever these animals have their wings is where we have our shoulders, at the shoulder girdle, right where we have our arms. So the wings in nature are always attached at the top, not at the bottom. And so, and also the other thing is that, you know, nowhere in nature do birds have an upright tail fin. You know, the tail fin of a bird is horizontal. So, you know, and then plus, you know, anyone who has seen the programs knows that larger models of these gold flyers were made, and they flew perfectly aerodynamic and were able to perform unbelievable aerial maneuvers.
Yeah, and I saw that on TV, and I thought it was just, well, what more do you need to know that these people had aerodynamic knowledge? Before we go too much further, though, I wanted to let everybody know, because I think I forgot to up to now, but I did put it in the chat room, that Giorgio's website is www.legendarytimes.com, and he's got this magazine there that you can sign up for, and he keeps you up to current on the latest that's going on in the ancient alien field. And he does travel and do first-hand research, so the stuff that he's going to be bringing you is going to be first-hand in the field experience stuff in many of the cases. Is that correct, Giorgio?
Yes, and I couldn't have said it better myself, because, you know, in this day and age with Photoshop and all those things, it's very crucial that, you know, you publish stuff that has photos of things that have been shot out in the field. And we are not armchair scientists or armchair researchers. We go out there in the field, we look at the things, we measure them, we touch them, we smell them. I mean, you know, just look at the environment. And so, you know, none of our research that we publish in Legendary Times, you know, has been given to us by a being on a higher plane, or that was channeled to us, or such stuff. It is basically, you know, we went out there, just like Eric will go back to Papunku in November 2010, you know, and we'll take more pictures and things like this. I mean, we actually go out there and we're explorers, you know, because that is the only way, you know, how you can change somebody's viewpoint, because the days are gone, or there's no longer days where you can basically just sit at home and read different books and then just copy. Because in most science books or you know, textbooks, what's happened is that many researchers basically just copy other research books, but they don't go out in the lab and do their own research, or they don't go out in the field to do their own research. So that is something that we try to stay away from as far as we possibly can.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I do have a guy that I've recently had on my show, goes by the name Laser Les. I think his name's Les Tyndall. And he's found some, I think he said it was in Arizona, some rocks that had images grooved into them, that it took a special kind of technology, a special way of looking at the negative to read, that he says that these here rocks have images carved in that are like pictures of Inky and the unicorn and things like that. I don't know if that would be of any interest to you, but I thought I'd mention it to you.
Yeah, sure. I've never heard of it, but you know, it's there's a lot of stuff out there. Absolutely.
And his website is www.impactoptics.com. If you want to, it's either Impact Optic or Impact Optics, I think, one of the two. I can email you the link if you like, if you want to take a peek and see what he's got. It might be something you could add to your research here if it turns out for you or not. I don't know. You'd have to check yourself, but I thought I would mention it just in case.
We're always looking for new stuff. Absolutely. Sure.
Now, during the last 10 minutes, Giorgio, I do not want to let you get out of here after you dropped that nice little bombshell about a second series of Ancient Aliens, if I understood you correctly. I want to know a little more about this because I want to make sure I don't miss it.
Who told you that? Where did you get that from? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, actually, I am in LA right now, and like I mentioned earlier, and the reason why I'm here is because a few weeks ago, like 6 weeks ago, we started season 2 on Ancient Aliens, and I'll be once again the consulting producer of the program. And this time, instead of having 5 2-hour programs, season 2, there actually will be 10 1-hour programs. So I think the 10-hour format, 10 1-hour program format is fantastic because, 2 hours, I mean, look, they did a great job holding the attention of an audience for 2 hours in season 1. But now we've got 10 1-hour episodes, and so what we'll do is we'll be able to go not wider, but deeper into the mystery. So there will be a few things that we'll revisit, but at the same time, and I can tell this from very confidential source here, we're also exploring many new things, and I'm also very happy to announce that we also have a whole bunch of new experts on the program as well, because they saw how wonderful season 1 was, and when we called them, they immediately said yes. And that means a lot because Ancient Aliens is one of the first shows where, our side of the story is presented in a rather coherent fashion, and there's no stupid Twilight Zone music in the background. There's no campy sci-fi clips and things like that. So, I am extremely proud of the pilot and then season 1, and I can already tell you right now that season 2 is it's going to be awesome.
I apologize for that laugh, but the way you put that Twilight thing just caught my funny bone there.
No, I agree with you. Absolutely. It is funny. Sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you, Giorgio. I'm a way back big-time proponent of the ancient astronaut theory. After I've done read books by William Bromley and Eric and, Zachariah Sitchin. I've read some of Jason Martell's work. I've talked to a bunch of people and seen a lot of stuff on the History Channel, and done a lot of the research that I could, either online through books or on TV myself. And I personally think that the case for ancient visitation, look at the work with star maps that Robert Duvall done. Wayne Herschel's, validated his work and taken it a little bit further. And Graham Hancock, God knows he's done a lot in the field as well. The evidence out there is just massive, if you ask me.
Yes.
So, and if people don't know something about it, I think it's really because they don't study, because I tell you what, I spent over 15 years studying, and I found out there's no shortage of reading material.
Oh, no. That's why everybody is worried about season 2. What are we going to talk about? There's so much material out there. I mean, we're barely scratching the surface. And, and that's the great thing about the ancient astronaut theory, that you can look at virtually any ancient culture. It doesn't matter where that culture is from, if it's from Europe, Scandinavia, Asia. There are references of these humanoid beings descending from the sky and teaching mankind various disciplines. And, I mean, that's just fascinating stuff, especially when you finally come to the conclusion that, you know what, not everything we've been taught in school is exactly the way it was.
Or taught in church, for that matter.
Yeah.
Or by science.
Sure, but look, I mean, personally, I am a deep believer in God, you see, but it's basically the same question or same situation when Einstein was asked throughout his lifetime by journalists, Dr. Einstein, do you believe in God? And he would always come back with the question, well, before I can answer that question, we have to first define what our mutual ideas of God are. Because, I most certainly don't believe that in a God of the Old Testament, because whatever was described in there was a misunderstood flesh and blood extraterrestrial who had his way with our race, with our species. And that is a pretty hard pill to swallow for a great majority of Christians. Now, like I said, I still believe in God, but it's way bigger than a person or a being farting around in some spaceship or from some vehicle going from point A to point B. I mean, it's way bigger than that. And so, if anything, the whole ancient national theory, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the interview, it enhances your belief, or at least it does mine, that creation has been way more magnificent than what we've been led to believe. And to be honest with you, the whole idea that everything started at one point and that in the Big Bang and that everything will come to a sudden end at one of these, in the next 100 millions of years, or billions of years, the question I have is, what if that's not the case? What if all of this has always been here and that there was no beginning and there never will be an end? I mean, go ahead and point out the beginning of a circle for me. You can't do it. And so because I'm a firm believer that out of nothing, there's nothing can come out of nothing. And then when you say, well, you have God, well, then the question is, well, who created God? And then you say, well, God always was. And so that is my opinion, that's the universe. I mean, that's just the whole essence of everything that all of us are a part of.
Yeah, and I kind of tend to agree with you on that. I'm more into the Hermetic teachings of ancient Egypt than I am actual church and religion, but that's something we can't go into in 3 minutes. But I do want to thank everybody for coming and participating in the show. I couldn't have a show without my listeners anymore. I could have a show without a guest. I always like to make sure I remind people I haven't forgotten that. And Giorgio, you've been a real pleasure. You were a pleasure the last time you were on my show, and you're a pleasure again this time. You're knowledgeable, you're honest, you're upfront, and you do thorough work, and I really got to have a lot of respect for you for that.
I really appreciate that, and I always welcome the opportunity to talk about this stuff because I have yet to meet anyone. I mean, and I'm talking about young kids. I have yet to meet any young kids in their teens and 20s and early 30s, who say, after I tell them what I do for a living, who would say, well, that's weird. No, everyone says the same thing. That is exciting. I had no idea this stuff exists. So, I mean, we're doing this one person at a time here, and, being on a show like yours, it's all part of the process, and I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to be on your show again.
And I'm thankful that you were here, Giorgio, and be honest with you, I'd love to have you back again anytime in the future, and I will be following your work. I always have.
You got it. Absolutely.
All right, and I'll email you that link for that one guy. Either send it to you or to Catherine, whichever one will get through, and you can check them out yourself and see what you think. And if you need his email address or anything, I have permission to give it to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also email me those portions where it talks about the gods in lowercase g in the Bible. I would find that highly fascinating to check it out for myself.
Okay.
No pressure. No pressure. At your leisure, it's okay. It doesn't have to be tomorrow.
All right. Thanks a lot, Giorgio. And I'll be looking forward to catching Ancient Aliens too. Real quick, though, before this last minute kicks off, can you tell me when that's going to be coming out?
Episode 1, called The Gods, will air tentatively on October 28th, so only 2-3 weeks from now, and it's on the History Channel, so just check your local listings around the end of October. Watch out for, Ancient Aliens. But tentatively speaking, Ancient Aliens, first episode out of 10, will commence airing on October 28th.